A huge thank you to patron Eric Southard for suggesting today's video topic. If you want to suggest a topic for next Wednesday's Name Explain video, all you have to do is support Name Explain on Patreon for $1 a month. Find out more by visiting patreon.com/nameexplain, which will be linked down below. Anyway, animals get their names through all different kinds of origins, whether they be named after one of their notable features, or being named after where they live, or even being named after an entirely different animal. One of the more unique ways in which we name animals, however, has to be when their name derives from the world of myths and legends, as opposed to the realm of truth and facts. Throughout history and across many different cultures, humans have created intricate myths and legends to help explain the world around them. From these myths, creatures emerged. Creatures that range from friendly animals which signal good luck, to terrifying monsters which were said to cause havoc when they emerged. While these mythological creatures aren't real, as far as we know, many of them live on in our real world in a unique way, and that's through the names of very much real wildlife that grace our globe. In some cases, these animals named after mythical creatures are really easy to spot, with the likes of the goblin shark being named after trickster creatures of medieval Europe, or even the dragonfly, named after the mythological flying reptiles found across many cultures. While these obvious ones are interesting in their own way, I like to look for less obvious things here on the channel. The animal names you most likely know about already, that are baked into your brain, but you may not actually know they have their origins in the worlds of myths, legends, and lore. A great example of that being the zebra, a kind of wild horse native to various parts of Africa, well known for its black and white striped pattern and often on the receiving end of a hungry lion's mouth. Despite being of African origins, the name for these creatures instead comes from languages of the Iberian Peninsula, with Portuguese being its primary source of origin. During the Middle Ages on this peninsula, there was a legendary creature known as the zebros in Portuguese, this name being an adaptation of the Latin equiferus, meaning wild horse. This creature was indeed a wild horse that roamed the land. From one description, it apparently had long ears, striped skin, and was larger than a deer, but not as big as a proper horse. It's easy to see from that description as to why Portuguese explorers in Africa named these wild horses after one of their legends from back home. We don't seem to be too sure as to what the real zebroses actually were. They may have actually been wild mules and horses, or they may not have been anything at all. Another mammal native to Africa with a name of mythological origins is the lemur. This very unique family of primates are only found natively on the island of Madagascar. They are known for their long tails and huge eyes. It was their unique gangly shape which inspired their mythological name. The name lemur was placed on them by Carl Linnaeus, someone deeply important to the world of animal nomenclature. He derived this name from the lemurs of Roman mythology. The lemurum were vengeful ghosts and spirits of the dead in ancient Rome. Their name got applied to this primate as the animal reminded Linnaeus of haunting ghosts thanks to their large eyes and spindly human-like physiques. Roman mythology is heavily inspired by the mythology of Greece. Much of Rome's mythology was borrowed from the Greeks, but given new names. Thankfully, we have animals which have names inspired directly from the myths of Greece, with a prime example being the echidna. Echidnas are seriously strange animals. They are mammals with long quills like a porcupine, but also long beak-like snouts like a bird. One of the more unique features of them is the fact that they are one of the few mammals to actually lay eggs. This means they are closely related to the other egg-laying mammal of the platypus. And of course, Knuckles from Sonic is an echidna too, though he doesn't look all that much like the real ones. Echidnas are seen as being these strange, almost hybrid animals, which equal part mammal and equal part reptile due to their egg-laying capabilities, as well as down to other facts like they are once venomous, like snakes are. It's from this idea of them being part reptile and part mammal as to where the name comes from. There is an echidna in Greek mythology. This echidna is seen as the mother of all the monsters, quite literally as she gave birth to the dreaded Hydra. She is often depicted as being part woman and part snake, like a serpent mermaid of sorts. This kind of half-human, half-snake person is commonly known as a lamia too. Because she was part reptilian and part mammalian, her name got applied to this odd creature that was also seen as being a mixture between the two. Of course, echidnas aren't actually part reptile, they are just a very odd mammal. But an animal that is 100% reptile is the python, and unlike the echidna of Greek mythology, they are all snake. Their name too comes from Greek mythology. One particular snake-like beast was called the python. It guarded the oracle at Delphi and was killed by the god Apollo. The entire python family of snakes were named after this one mythological beast. Greek mythology also featured a creature called a strix. It was a bird-like monster and often seen as a bad omen, meaning that if it appeared, disaster was right around the corner. And just to make them even more irksome, they apparently enjoyed the taste of human flesh. So if you spotted one of these in ancient Greece, your best bet was to run in the other direction. fiction. They are often depicted as larger birds with sharp claws and distinctly rounder faces and larger eyes than those found on an atypical bird. In fact, the bird they are often thought to look most like are owls, so it should come as no real surprise to find out that an entire genus of owls have been named Strix in honor of this mythical creature. The name is applied to a group of owls which share the common trait of being earless. At least they look earless anyway. I'm sure they have ears somewhere underneath all that fluff. Thankfully, these owls are not as scary as their mythological counterparts, nor do they imply that doom is imminent. Linnaeus, who also named lemurs, once again named this branch of owls after the creatures from mythology. Salamanders are really interesting animals. They're amphibians along the likes of newts and frogs. The name itself was attached in the far past to a very unique kind of creature. The mythological salamander has taken on many different appearances, and the origin of the name is unknown too. It's thought to even predate the Greeks. The reoccurring theme of salamanders in mythology, however, is the idea that they are fire resistant. Not only can they withstand the heat, but they supposedly thrive in it, and are even seen as being able to extinguish flames in some myths. What's odd is that no one really seems to know where this myth originates from, or why the name ended up getting applied to this amphibian. Real salamanders aren't that fire resistant seemingly, so if you come across one, please don't feel the need to chuck it in a fire and find out for yourself. Killer whales, meanwhile, are one of the top predators on the planet. These marine mammals are known for their hunting skills, as well as their high intelligence. When they aren't hunting seals, they are destroying boats in the Mediterranean. While that name of killer whale doesn't relate to mythology, their other name of orca certainly does. The name comes from the Old French orque, which in the past was used for not one specific creature, but more as a catch-all name for sea monsters as a whole. As orcas are pretty scary creatures that live in the sea, it's easy to see why this name got applied to them. But what's interesting is that French term also created another term in English too. It also became just orc in Old English as well. Orc became a term for monsters and horrible creatures in general in Old English, and eventually got applied more to land-based monsters than sea ones. Orc today, however, is way more linked with the mythology of J.R.R. Tolkien and his Middle-earth, as opposed to any real-world mythology. He borrowed the term for one of the key enemy races in his writing. This means that orcas aren't directly named after orcs, but they do share an etymological tie to one another. We already mentioned the dragonfly, a creature named after dragons, but as mentioned, that's a tad on the nose. Thankfully, we do have another real animal named after dragons that is far less obvious. And despite all the mighty creatures similar to real dragons on our planet, the ones that I want to highlight are worms. Worms are some of the most mundane creatures on our globe. They're little more than pink squiggles that burrow around in the dirt. While boring, they are also incredibly important to our planet too. Despite how pathetic they might seem, their name does indeed derive from one of the most ferocious creatures of legend. It derives from the Old English name of a dragon, a worm. This word has its origins in words like to turn and bend, and relates to the fact that dragons in the past were often depicted as being somewhat more snake-like, long wriggly things with no legs. Once again, Tolkien used the word at times, and today the word can still be used when talking about specific kinds of dragons that fit this bill of being legless and long. Eventually, this word of worm got applied to all kinds of legless wiggling creatures like snakes, slow worms, and of course, actual worms too. The Y in the spelling eventually shifted to an O too. I just find it hilarious that one of the most fearsome creatures from myths across the globe has its real life counterpart be a little pink noodle with no eyes that rolls around in the dirt all day. Language is weird sometimes. Finally, I want to highlight the manatee. These marine mammals are often called sea cows due to their calm temperament and the fact they do little other than eat seagrass all day. The name manatee itself doesn't come from myths. It's believed to come from the Carib word of manati, which means breast or udder, due to how they feed their young. What does relate to mythology, however, is the name of the order they are in, Sirenia, along with the dugong. This name comes from the myths of sirens, aka mermaids, the half-fish women who would beckon sailors to their doom. This name got applied to this order, as in the past, sailors thought they had spotted mermaids, but they were actually manatees. This mythological mistake is still reflected in the order name for these creatures. The general consensus is that most myths and legends are based on some kernel of truth. While the animals covered in this video received their name from these myths, it's likely that most of these myths were inspired by very much real animals too. So in some cases, animals being named after mythical creatures is a somewhat full circle. Though in reality, the real animals can be quite different to the myths, like how a fire-breathing winged reptile can, in reality, just be a little pink guy who eats dirt all day. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.